How's it going, guys? I am Folkerman, your local brick built historian, with another brick built history. Today we're taking a look at the infamous Psnzerkampfwagen VI Ausführung Tiger 1, or known as a Tiger tank. Now, this is the most famous tank of World War II, without a doubt, in anyone's mind. So if you've never heard of this tank, you've probably never seen World War II at all. So we have the Brickmania kit today, and let's go take a look at it. The very first thing is the box. So this is the 131 version. The license with the Tank Museum, because Tiger 131 is special for being the only running tank, or Tiger tank, in the world. So they have this cool special box for it. You have the colored picture in the front here. 2269, nice. The Balkenkreuz, skill level 4 out of 5. 887 pieces of Lego Brickmania and Brick Arm elements with a minifigure. Designed by Daniel Siskin, the Commander-in-Chief. This side is very similar. Legal stuff. I have number 237. So they made a lot of these. And then in the back, you have a cool action shot of the commander here just chilling in his tank like a villain. And then you got Tiger 131 kit, includes a detailed playable interior and engine compartment with room for 2 minifigs inside the hull. Additionally, there are 27 UV printed elements, including Tiger 1 radio and custom Tiger Commander in tropical uniform. Also featured is a hull-mounted Brick Arms MG34 machine gun for the radio operator, full 360-degree turret rotation and posable main gun, fully articulated tracks, and realistic suspension, and 4 opening hatches for crewmen. So there's a lot. So let's take a look at it. Now, here is Tiger 131, but not only do I have that, I have 2. So I'll throw this one off to the side for now. Let's take a look at the 131 itself. So Tiger 131 was captured in Africa during the African campaign, and there's a bunch of history on 131. The best way to find that, go to the Tank Museum's channel and see David Fletcher talk about it himself, or David Wiley, one of the two. The two Davids. But they go into immense depth of how this got captured and what they did with it. But the shorthand is, in Africa, a shell hit the turret and it got stuck. The crew bailed. They brought it back to England, put it into working order, and just kept it like that, basically. So in Bovington, the Tank Museum there, they do keep it in working order, although they took a Maybach engine from a Tiger 2, I believe, and slapped it in their Tiger 1, which it's the same engine, so, you know, still pretty original. But let's take a look at this kit. The way that the Tiger is, like, it is pretty boxy, so it's pretty easy to make, like, to make this part with the very boxy look. But you do have the angles here, which are gloriously captured, and getting this right here, this subtle angle going down, is really, really cool seeing that. And you got like the exhaust and other engine trinkets down here with a I don't remember how this opens. There it goes. You got a little engine compartment here. So that's pretty cool. The turret can go 360 degrees, but you have to be careful of the antenna back here. The gun, it elevates and depresses pretty nicely. And the brick built camouflage of these African core, like tropical camo, is really cool. You can see the different, like the two different tans and how wonderful it all goes together. It's really, really cool. Although there are some things like the clips here for the hatches, which do open like that. And it's not too difficult to open and close those. This one opens as well. So you can put your gunner there or whatever. So yeah, it's a really, really cool kit with a lot of play features. The tracks move. It's much better on carpet, but you can see they do move pretty easily. You got the suspension, like the interwoven wheels, which is a very iconic part of the Tiger. The interweaving wheels. So this suspension is really cool, watching it go up and down. And then you have like your MG34 here, that it moves around, kind of like a ball turret, although it will go backwards into it a little bit, so you have to be aware of that. You have your sight port here, the commander, which this tropical uniform is really, really sweet. He's got the goggles around his neck. The cap is 3D printed. He's got 360 degree printing. He's got what looks like an iron cross on his breast pocket. So yeah, they always make their German guys look mean. Like, it's interesting. And the turret pops off pretty easily. So does the, try not to completely break it. So does the rest of the body. You can see the Maybach engine here and the custom radio printing tile there. You got the seats with the steering wheel here. So it's all pretty cool. You can really get a good shot of the suspension through the tracks. Yeah, so it goes apart pretty easily, comes together pretty easily, so you can constantly take it off and put it back on, and take it off and put it back on without really any true worries. There, boom. That's it. That is probably the coolest feature about this, is the ability to put it on and off. So, you know, I really like that. Now, this tank, the other Tiger I have, it doesn't have as many features in it, like on the inside. It's got a different way of connecting the turret, but it does still have the hatches, still has all the other stuff. It just doesn't have the engine in the back. The wheels are different. It's got a slightly different wheel for the suspension, but it still works. It's the exact same. It's still got the exact same profile, just a slightly different, cheaper model. So if you want a cheaper version of the Tiger, this is the one you want. And if you want the more expensive premium, put the center, more expensive premium, that would be the one you want. So both of these, I think this one's like 200 and some, this one's like 400 and some, and it's like, you know, you can see the love and care they put into this, and plus it's got the license from the tank museum, and the money from this does go to the tank museum, which is a really cool thing, which is probably the biggest reason I got this at first, was because it is going to the tank museum. Like, money is going to the tank museum, and anytime I can help get a museum to keep on kicking, that is always a good thing. So, you know, if you want to get the more expensive and help out the museum, go ahead and do that. But if you don't, go with the one that's half the price, but you don't have as many of the cool features, like the printed radio and the built-in interior. You can still build the interior on this one, but it doesn't come with it like this one. So overall, Dan, who's built both of these, Dan did a really good job of this Tiger tank. It's really, really cool. It's, you know, you can go to anyone and go, hey, there's a tiger, and they know exactly what you're talking about. And he did a really great job capturing every single angle, from the side skirting here to this front part of the armor, to the iconic turret with the 88mm gun. One thing I do have to mention is this 3D printed muzzle on the lighter colored one is a little fragile. It stays on there, but it's got like a crack down the side. But, you know, like the way that 3D printing is, the lighter material you have, the more brittle it's going to be. Like the lighter color, it's a weird thing with 3D printing, but, you know, it stays on perfectly fine. So, you know, no need to get all fussy about it. But anyway, from here, let's talk about the history, because the Tiger has some history that people always enjoy. Well, the Psnzerkampfwagen VI Ausführung Tiger 1 basically means Armored Combat Vehicle 6 Model E. It was originally called the Model H in the beginning, during a prototype stage, because the Tiger program was, the way that they did this is that they had a Krupp turret. So this is the Krupp turret, and they needed a body to go along with it. So there's two main companies building the body here for the Tiger. There's Henschel and Porsche. So Henschel's is this, obviously, because he won. And Ferdinand Porsche had this weird, like, gas electric driven thing that, like, had some kind of weird suspension, and it was a dumpster fire, and a literal engine fire hazard, because the engine, like, in the whenever they had the two tanks go off against each other, it would go, like, I think it went like 17 feet before it started on fire, and it was like, okay, Henschel won. But then the chassis of the Porsche Tiger, Porsche was super confident, so he built like 90 of them, and they turned them into the Ferdinand, and what later would become the Elephant, and it would have the same exact problems. But yeah, so Henschel's design would become the Tiger, and then Porsche would eventually reluctantly be the Ferdinand, and it was absolute garbage. Not that this was any, like, a godsend. The Tiger has this kind of weird aura about it, where people go like, oh, the Tiger it was virtually indestructible to Allied tanks and this and that. Well, the Tiger really wasn't as good as people think it was. The biggest thing was it had a lot of mechanical problems, mostly because of the over-engineering that the Germans are very famous for. But I mean, like this interweaving road wheels here, in order to get to the one behind there, because there's one here, you have these two, and then there's another one behind there. In order to get to that one, you have to take this road wheel off, and you have to take these two off to get these two off to get that one back there. So you take off five other road wheels to get to the one back there, and it's a pain. Not to mention the fact that the engines were extremely unreliable. The transmissions were always just garbage. The transmissions would crap out on them all the time. Speaking of which, the engine that they used was the Maybach HL210 P45 with 650 horsepower, and then later on they'll get the HL230 P45 with 700 horsepower, which didn't really help too much. The max speed was 28.2 miles per hour on the road with 12 to 16 miles per hour cross country. So this thing was slow. It was really slow. Not as slow as something like the infantry tanks of the British, but those were purposely slow. But this thing was slow. This thing was like 57 tons of just massive tank. And you have 700 horsepower pushing that thing. Ugh. Yeah, it was really slow. The other thing is that it used this double differential steering system where it has like the different speeds to steer it, and it had like 16 predetermined radiuses or radii to turn, and then it would use a clutch and brake system, basically where you would stop the track of one to turn it over like all the lighter tanks use. That was as a backup, because the clutch and brake would just trash the transmission even more than it already does. But yeah, so this would originally start being built in August of 1942, and Hitler wanted this to be pushed into service immediately. So in September 23rd of 1942, it would be seen at Leningrad, or right outside of Leningrad, to be the first battle of it. And there was a total of 1,347 of these things built, and they would go mostly to the Eastern Front, some to Africa, as you can tell from 131 here, and very few to the Western Front. Basically, the whole thing of seeing Shermans going against tigers and more tigers, that really didn't happen too often. There was not very many Tiger tanks that were seen in the Western Front by the Allies. Most of the time, you'd see them sometimes in Africa, or mostly on the Eastern Front, because that's what the Tiger was built for. It was built to go against the Soviet tanks, because the Soviets, they had their KV-1s, their KV-2s, eventually the IS-2s, their T-34s. Like, they had these pretty heavy advanced tanks, and the Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs, they couldn't do anything against them, really. And Hitler needed bigger, heavier tanks to go against the Soviet Union, because he didn't expect the Soviet Union to have all these really good tanks. He was expecting BT-5s and BT-7s, which they also had, and originally in Barbarossa, a lot of the BT series were literally thrown at the Germans, but they still had their T-34s and KV-1s and KV-2s as well, and those things were pretty big compared to the German Panzers. So he started what would be the third generation of Panzers, which are coincidentally called the Big Cats, because you had the Panther, the Panzerkampfwagen V, or Panzer V, Panther. Then you had the Panzerkampfwagen VI, the Tiger, and then you had the Tiger II, and then eventually go into the Mouse, which, you know, and then you have the Rat, which is even more ridiculous, but that didn't leave the drawing boards. Actually, I think that was I think that was drawn on a napkin of all things, but probably as a joke, I hope. But this was really in response to the Soviets, because the Soviets had really good tanks that they were not expecting, and they needed something to punch through and break down the Soviet armor. And that's where these came from. Also, by the way, the name Tiger came from Ferdinand Porsche, because he was really expecting to win, and he's like, I'll name mine the Tiger, and well, Henschel's design eventually won. So one of the other things about this is the fact that it really couldn't go too far, and is better in open country, because this gun, which is an 8.8 centimeter KWK 36L56, it is a long gun. This is a long 88 millimeter gun, and having these things in towns or like in villages or forests, it doesn't really work well, which is also probably why they didn't have too many of these in the Western Front, because having this thing in the Ardennes really wouldn't be too happy. Or if you're in like Nancy, France, and you have the buildings in the way, or if you're in what was the town in Kelly's Heroes, where you got the tank that it was showing its butt to Oddball, and they shot paint at it, and he was trying to spin his turret, but it got caught in the building and got caught in like a wall, and they were eventually able to hit it and kill it. Which, by the way, if you watch that movie and pay attention to the Tigers, they are actually on T-34 chassis. Little known fact. Speaking of which, only 7 Tigers actually survive to this day, and it's kind of weird to think that you have over 1,300 Tigers built, but only 7 of them survive. That means 1,340 of them approximately were destroyed to the point of no return. And a lot of times it was the crews, basically they call it scuttling, kind of like a ship, destroying it to the point, like actually destroying it to that point, so that whenever the Allies would come by, they wouldn't be able to grab it and learn something from it, which is interesting. So besides having 131 here, I also put Turret 217 on this one. Now the 217 is the turret number of Otto Carius. If you don't know who Otto Carius was, he was one of the most prominent German tank aces of World War II, especially with his Tiger 217. If you want to learn more, like, just look up Otto Carius. He was a very, very good tank commander, which I guess is why he is a tank ace. So, you know, go ahead and take a look at that. So, the Tiger would have a crew of 5. So you have the commander up here is Coppola, which is basically like it's a raised part of the tank. So if he was like in here, inside, there'd be viewports around here, which is a very Germanic way of making it. So the Germans put cupolas in all their tanks so that the commander can be buttoned up and still be able to see around and spot enemies. Why other countries didn't do this is kind of a mystery, but also like the periscopes would be used quite often, so it all depends on what you want to use. So the commander would be there. You'd have a loader and a gunner inside for the 88 millimeter. The driver over here with his viewport over here, and then as I showed on the inside, you have the radio panel on this side. So this guy's radioman, and he's also operating this MG34. And there's also a coaxial gun symbolized right there. So the gunner would have his main gun and his coax gun. Oh, and another little fun fact, the main gun uses electrically fired shells. So the primers are actually electrically fired, which I didn't know that. That is very weird to think, because usually it's kind of like a normal gun where a firing pin will strike the primer, sets off the powder, and then everything goes boom. But this uses an electrical firing for the primer. So kind of weird and different. But, just because it's weird and different doesn't mean it's good. So in the end, the Tiger is seen as the ultimate bad guy tank. Anytime you watch any World War II movie, whether it's Kelly's Heroes that's supposed to be satirical, to Fury that's supposed to be cool and actiony, it's all tigers. Everyone sees the Tiger and they know the Tiger. Even in like A Bridge Too Far and all this, the things you most likely to see is a Tiger, because Tiger tanks are just that tank. It's that cool German tank that is huge and people know, and people always think, man, that's a big tank. So, it's just a weird thing of history where this thing is blown up to look a lot better than it really was. So history has been really nice to the Tiger, despite all of its flaws. It's got many flaws. So, it's just weird how history portrays stuff like this. So, with that said, these kits are awesome. I think this is probably one of my few favorite kits. Well, I mean, I like them all, but these are like maybe on the top, or like going towards the top of the list. Unless I can get my hand on the Atlas Mosquito, then that's automatically top. But these are pretty high up there, especially since I got two of them, and I can have them like together all the time. But if you learn something, hit a thumbs up. Tell me in the comments what you learned and all that. I advise you looking more into stuff like this, more into not only the Tiger, but the other German armor, which hopefully I can get some other Panzers and like the Sturmgeschütz and more Jagdpanzers and stuff like that. If I could get a Hetzer, that'd be cool. But I do have a Panzer IV, a Panzer III, and a Panzer 38T coming my way, so we'll see with that. But with that said, if you want to see those, make sure you subscribe so you can get a chance to see those as soon as they're posted. But with that said, I've been Fulcrum Man, and let's continue to build history.